Hello and welcome to episode 14 of the Topbin90 Podcast. We're back after another Charlotte win. To my left, I have my man Brian Bam Mauer Media. How are you today?
Doing pretty well, man. Excited for the show. I feel like I'm now getting to be involved with the OG group right now.
Yeah, so. This is a very, very OG group.
The Mount Rushmore, I would say.
I like
Mount Rushmore. Yeah, camera. Look at the camera when you want to talk. Right into
we got Mr. George Washington himself.
Yeah. What you just saying that because I got white hair? No, don't encourage that, Caleb. Hey, it's good to have you back.
I don't even think he can't be George Washington because you're English.
That's right.
We were liberated from you. What are you talking about?
Yeah. We got Westwood.
Man, he lost the war in 1776 and Spurs lost.
Hey, but Charlotte's in the playoffs.
Hey,
that's I got Caleb back, not corporate Caleb, man.
Nice. So, we do.
Yeah, I would take a Spurs L to have a Charlotte playoff and then corporate Caleb back.
Wow.
Now we can text again.
That's true friendship right there. That's true love.
I'm just kidding. I fucking Spurs, what the fuck. Anyways, go
ahead.
ahead.
You curse on the show?
Yeah. We'll bleep it out.
Yeah.
I always say that and we just leave it.
Sorry, I will be more professional.
And then we also have Caleb, it's been a while.
What's up? It's so good to be back.
Nice. Awesome. How you feeling, man? Excited?
I feel great. I yesterday was the first time I went to a game as just a fan in over 3 years since I started the team. So it was really special. It was really special to just be in there.
So did your thoughts on the team change, man?
You say what?
Did your thoughts on the team change?
Not at all.
No?
The difference is I can say it publicly now.
There is that. Well, that's kind of what
always the saying.
I'm just throwing it out there, man. Yeah. You go ahead and bite when you need to, man.
Did you say did it feel different?
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's different. I think I could be a little more emotionally involved. Whereas when you work for a club or like any sort of publication, you have to be a little more, just kind of colder, more objective. So, but you can have a little more heart and emotion when you're
100%
just fanning.
Yeah, because I remember we've obviously met through following Charlotte FC, which was cool.
Regal Soccer Show.
Yeah, no, I think the cool thing is I moved to Charlotte for the team, and I built my whole life and foundation and roots here through the team. My friends, y'all, came through the team, right? What I did on weekends, was involved with the team. Even my coworkers, who would I hang out with? A bunch of them. So literally my whole life revolved around the team.
You're welcome.
Around the club.
You're welcome.
So, yeah.
You're welcome.
Nice. Awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit about, we've got a couple of topics tonight that I want to touch on. Obviously, we'll talk about Charlotte's win against Montreal yesterday. We've been talking a lot about the changes in the back line, but I also want to touch a little bit on that Brandt and Urso, in that midfield. I also want to chat a little bit on Yere and his absence on the team. Also, I want to cover who would you guys rather have in the playoffs. And lastly, what we're missing to compete for that, what I would call that first tier of MLS, which I'm talking about our LA Galaxies, our Inter Miamis, our Columbus Crew. So let's get right to it. And I'll start off with you, Brian. Give me your thoughts on last night's match.
Yeah. I think Dean summed it up really well. I think just the off the ball, the defensive work, I think was pretty solid. They lost a little bit of control there at the start of the second half, but nothing really super dangerous against them, and just keeping a clean sheet. They hadn't kept that many clean sheets. They had the 4-0 win against New England, but besides that, it had been 13 games or something with only that one clean sheet. So having that one against Montreal was solid for me. I think that was the main thing there, was just sort of keeping that composure like we had seen earlier on in the year when they had that streak.
That's because we got Privet back in now, man.
Yeah.
Privet is it, man. Go ahead and put Reem over there. Take Reem off. You bring Urona now, man. I don't care. Privet stays in there with Melanda, man. I don't give a shit what y'all said.
Speaking of Privet, one of the things that Dean mentioned was that there was a little bit of a stomach bug going around, and he still was able to play. So that goes to show you how high in regards he still has him to, where because he could go back to the back four with Euronin and Tim Ream, but he was like, okay, well, I'm gonna at least try to get 70 minutes out of this guy, right?
Yeah,
slot him back in. And one of the things going into the match, Caleb, that we kind of had concerns about was defensively. When we played Chicago, they played through us a lot, right? And we improved on that aspect a lot.
No, we did. I think we find a little bit of magic with this lineup, and it's slowly also improving on top of that. So we made this shift, tactical and personnel shift, but now we're seeing it sort of even being improved upon more. Like it looks like every game we're getting a little bit sharper, a little bit more in sync on the offense. Guys are getting used to playing in these spots. Ream at left back's a little bit unusual. And so MLS is all about momentum.
Yep.
Like you could be trash all season long, but if you go on a hot streak at the very end.
And we're finally scoring goals too, right? Like
Oh, so
11 in the
refreshing.
last 4, I think, right?
No,
It's
yeah.
like-
Everything's clicking, man.
Yeah.
We just got a clean sheet, right? Everything's clicking on offense. We got a little concerned with the defense. Kept a clean sheet. Finally got the bogey of not beating Montreal ever.
Yep.
that was
Which is
huge.
crazy.
I mean,
Thank
that was huge
goodness.
in itself, right?
Yep. And so, I feel like this season particularly, there's like a lot of things like breaking. Like generational curses in Charlotte FC.
All 3 years, right?
So, it's been awesome. It's been really fun. It's just been fun to watch the team. I don't remember the last time I had this much fun watching Charlotte.
Yeah, definitely. And like the last couple of games, you go into the matches, 4 goals against New England, 4 goals against Chicago, 2 against Montreal.
Yeah.
Obviously, talking about offensively, Lee, it's good to see, Swiderski kind of at his best.
Yeah.
And also seeing Patrick come off the bench and
Yeah.
score.
It
I
was
would
a
say that's
battle
probably one of
last
his
night.
best goals.
We were doing the fan interviews after the games, and it was like, Pat and versus like Carroll sort of debate again, right? It was like that old Enzo Carroll debate, but now like we've actually got 2 people that are scoring all of a sudden. Well, Pat's been scoring now.
Yeah.
To be fair,
But it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like, does Pat wear the super sub thing forever? Like, when does he shake it off? I feel like that's a bad thing. It
Yeah.
could be a bad thing
Well,
for him.
the good thing is that both of those strikers are kind of a different profile strikers, right? And with both of them kind of being hot right now, scoring goals, that's going to be important. Like Caleb touched on, building that momentum going into the playoffs, right? You're seeing, like, even that's probably one of Pat's best goals that he's ever
it's up
scored.
there. It was
you
up
know?
there.
Good goal.
It was a good one. He's had a few like that, but
But Swiderski put us up when it was 0-0. So I feel like that has a little bit of weight to it as well.
Yeah, and I could tell, like, in the press conference post the match, Swiderski touched on, like, he's like, hey, obviously on socials, like, I've seen people say that they didn't want me back. Some people say they did. So, like, you could tell that he also feels like a certain pressure kind of off of him as well, just building that momentum, with that Brandt, that I was kind of joking that Brandt gave him a pass, for the goal he scored against Miami. But that kind of broke that dry spell for him.
It did. I think that debate right now is like, my biggest thing when we talked about it last show was like, my main concern was, will Dean Smith be decisive with the 11?
Yeah.
Regardless if it's Swiderski or Agyemang at the time, my preference would have been Agyemang. But my biggest
would've
preference
started
was
him?
Yeah. But this was this was at right after the New England. I think it was right after the New England game before Miami.
Yeah.
But at this point, my biggest concern was whether or not Dean Smith would be decisive with his 11, stick with a group, and try to build momentum going into the playoffs, which is what he's done. And he picked Swiderski, so I wouldn't change anything.
this is
it's
the
not a
11.
debate that we need to. Because it's just
It's not.
that position
You're right.
is strong.
Yeah.
It's best case scenario right now.
Yeah, there's nothing.
I mean, that's the 11 that starts, right?
Agyemang's popping off.
That's the 11 that starts, and we're just going
Yeah.
to ride it as long as how far it takes us.
We can score with the starting
Yeah.
striker. We can score with the backup striker. You
Now-
know what I'm saying? Like it's the best case scenario. You want everyone clicking. I guess is getting some goals off the bench too.
Yeah.
You're gonna need that in playoffs. You're gonna need this impact.
Now, the issue in the offseason will be, obviously this debate will get hot because Agyemang does have a lot of hype built around him. There's no way he can keep the super sub forever.
But
There
the
are
thing is,
all
like,
the media are
some
looking
players
for him
come
to
on
start.
though, and they become like a starter, but they don't really ever, go up to their potential that they were as a sub. So it's just like some sort of like bad mojo just rides with you.
Somebody will
I
give
just
him a
hope
chance.
that. No, it's fair that
that's
they
the
give him the
thing.
chance, but it's like, can he capitalize on that chance when the chance?
That's
is
the
there?
tricky part. Is like the worst thing is like, say we want to go out, and we'll talk about this later when it comes to what's stopping us from being sort of that next tier of a team like Galaxy. But of course, you look at those teams and they got guys who can score you 20 goals a season.
Yeah.
Well, that's it.
Or
right?
4 guys who can do that.
Yeah, or 3 guys that can give you at least 10 goals apiece.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
So we got to see if Patrick can do that or not.
Yeah, and then just touching on, like, when we were looking at the window, I think you and I discussed this as well, where, like, I was like, I know if you put Swiderski in this team, he'll deliver you 6 to 8 goals, like through the end of the season, right? Like if he was here from the beginning, it would be 10 plus.
Yeah.
Right. And so like we kind of touched on that where like, okay, like we could gamble with a striker that like maybe doesn't hit, or we can gamble with a guy that we know will deliver you this amount of goals now.
I think that's why it was brought in, right?
Yeah.
It was like, okay, I personally like the approach of don't panic and buy players just because, like, we need a striker. Like, okay, nothing's there. Like, no really top guy who's going to make a difference makers there. All right, Swiderski wants to come back, bring him back, run him to the end of the season, reassess.
Yeah, but I don't feel like we have much choice, right, in that. Like, I feel like he was coming back regardless, and then to your point.
Well, I think
this is what we got. Let's try to figure out how we can use it.
One of the things that was very telling, though, was, like, there was still no true announcement, and Dean kind of just said, I'm counting on Swiderski. Like, he wasn't even, like...
Well, at the beginning of the season, though, it was the opposite, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm saying, like, in that transition period of, like, I felt like him saying that was his stamp, like, okay, like, whatever Swiderski and Zoran have to agree with, like, hey, like, I want to count on him for the rest of the season.
I still think he's gone and come the winner, right?
Well, that's the other question is, he's the right guy right now for us. The question is, is he Dean's guy? At the end of the day, that's what it ultimately comes down to.
100%.
Is he Dean's guy? Because at the end of the day, conversations are going to happen between the FO, Dean, and if Dean says, I want Swiderski to stay,
I don't think he's going to say that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the question.
Did you talk to him today?
Yeah. I'm actually over here text him right now. Dino, do you want Carol to stay? He said, we can't talk about this, but just between you and I.
Yeah. Awesome. Let's move a little bit into that midfield, right? I mean, Brandt and Urso are players that kind of have, to me, like a similar profile. But, we've seen both of them start the last 4 games, right? And I think they've been players that we haven't really touched on the importance of what they do to kind of unlock our forward line. So I guess I'll start off with you, Brian. Talk to us a little bit. Because I think even you mentioned it last night.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the issues we had before when they first got all these DPs back and kind of were setting them all up together was, Lil Abada and Biel, for me, aren't really two-way players so much. I don't really like the way they defend, and they like to kind of stay high. And I feel like Charlotte was getting kind of outnumbered in a lot of areas in the field. Montreal away, they were just outnumbered everywhere. And so I think what happened was Dean realized, because they started scoring more goals, but the changes he made were all more defensive. He took out an attacker and brought in Urso. He took out an attacking left back and brought in a center back. So the fact that he brought in more defensively minded options and they started scoring more goals, for me, tells me that the issue wasn't so much the attacking players on the field and more just finding stability, finding a way to start getting numerical advantages in better spots. That's where Urso and Brandt, their energy is able to give them a numerical advantage both in the box. They're occupying space when they are getting forward, but they're also willing to get back. And so they're not giving up sort of like those numerical disadvantages in transition as much either. So I feel like for me, that was one of the big things that I saw. The goal that I remember being really disheartened with was the Atlanta goal. You saw Swiderski, Abada, and Biel and Vargas all kind of stay high. The Atlanta played right through them, and you just saw 4 attacking players just kind of standing there waiting for the play to stop, and then Fortune was able to take it all the way home.
This is what it comes down to. They got that dog in them.
Yeah, there you go.
That's
exactly.
They got the X-dog.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. That's what it comes down to, because they're very similar players. I'm glad that you gave him a shout-out, because I think Brandt particularly deserves some real love.
Yeah.
Because
Undeniable,
man.
Yeah.
Because
You can't be hating on him,
you
man.
can't at this point. I know there's a lot of fans and people that have wanted to see
can't
him
hate on that
out of the
guy.
lineup and say,
Yeah.
let's try and upgrade Bronico. But
Preach.
time and time again, we're third year,
Preach.
third coach,
Yes.
Brandt Bronico.
I don't
forever.
think the people are in the
He's
back
undeniable.
urging, man.
Undeniable.
And I think one thing I've really been enjoying about his game recently that I think he's added is his passing's been pretty darn good.
3 assists.
He set up the Agyemang. Yeah, there you go. He set up Agyemang. He's had some really nice through balls and behind.
No, 100%.
And of course, he's had that defensive rate and effort. But
Yeah.
Bronico, I think, is once again hitting another tier. Right when we first signed Bronico, it was like, okay, he's this role player from Chicago. What's kind of his place here? He was a starting 6, right? Then he kind of developed into this like crashing the box 8.
Yeah.
Now he's playing a
Left
true,
back.
Yeah, we cannot forget the left back.
Don't forget left back. That's where he played the best.
Let's forget about that. That never happened.
He was doing such a good job of selling him, and you just brought it down.
Hey, but he did good in left back. I think he did all right back there.
We were 3-0 down against Atlanta.
Hey, we're
Hey,
just
to be
gonna roll
fair,
with it.
it wasn't his fault, guys.
No.
Point is, I talked to Brandt. I did an article about Brandt, and he was saying, he said something about me and English coaches. He said, I work really well with English coaches. He said, for the first time,
Give
I'm
it up
playing
for the
a box-to-box role. You know, he's playing a true box-to-box midfielder, and that's where that's his favorite spot. Yeah.
And there's an appreciation factor that he has, you know, that I think is something that also needs to be mentioned, you know. And I see that with Urso as well, you know, where he thought he had it difficult in Orlando his last year, coming here, something new, right? And you know, it feels like he's finally hitting his stride. And I think that's important. Like you touched on, going into playoffs with momentum.
Yep.
Right? And that's going to be important as well. You know, what is that team feeling heading into, you know, DC? And then, all right, cool, here comes playoffs. What is that atmosphere going to feel like? And our players need to be up for it.
And here's another point about Urso. He's the only guy on this starting 11 that really has any MLS playoff experience.
What do you mean? We played last year in the playoffs.
What do you mean, man? We're running it back.
Yeah, right. Back to back.
All right. Well, I mean, a full playoff run.
Fair enough.
All right.
Fair enough.
All right.
My concern though is we come from the Leagues Cup. We had some poor form.
Yeah.
Right. We finally got that fixed and back on track. Here we come, international break. Right. Then we play DC. And because we already made the playoffs and not the play-ins, there's probably another week break. We're not a fast starting backup team.
No, that's a good point, man. I thought about that too because, you know, the last time you had a break, like you said, we sort of dipped down again.
Yeah.
And so,
But to be fair, a lot of teams around us.
that's a good point.
Yeah,
that's
but-
a good point.
Yeah,
And
that's fair, but now we're
everybody
going
has-
into playoffs, though.
But everybody has
matters
to
more.
deal with international break.
Yeah,
this
I'm just
time.
saying, us, Charlotte, I just
Yeah.
don't think, we come out the gates
Yeah.
blazing out, we leave it
Well,
off.
I'm glad that we have that game in DC to kind of get us kicking back up, you know, and not
but then we got still
hey,
gotta wait
international
another
break.
week,
and
right?
then
Yeah, but so does the
playoff.
other team.
Yeah.
Because we
No,
won't-
that's fair,
Yeah, you know
but
what
I'm just
saying?
saying, I just don't think Charlotte's quick. It takes us a minute to get the...
You also got to think about this too. Think about the circumstance. Coming back into regular season in the middle of July, it's a grind. That's a grind of a league. You're coming back much more invigorated, I think. Seeing playoffs is oh my goodness.
Oh,
this
trust
is
me,
big, man.
we're content creators. We get the crap.
And you
We're
don't.
ready to go, too.
And you also don't have to win the first playoff game. It's a 3-game series. You have to win the
That's
home
fair,
game.
but I mean...
I'm just saying, if you come back rusty as the road team, you have to win one of the 2 road games. You don't have to win the first one. So if you come back a little rusty, you have to win your home game, obviously.
Yeah.
But you don't have to obviously it's not ideal, but worst case scenario,
should
if they
just
do come
roll right
back a little
into
rusty,
it,
you
man.
have that third opportunity as long as you win the home game. So that's one of the advantages of that first 3-game series is it allows for a little rust.
Yeah, that's true.
Speaking of home game, you know, last night it was a really good electric environment.
Man, the vibe was chill,
I felt
man.
good.
And the vibe was... That's the first time in the sports section in probably about 2 months where it's actually you just could feel how excited and everybody was.
That's good. I mean, that's going to be important too, that home playoff aspect of it's something that we've never experienced. We've never had a home playoff game.
No, we haven't.
You know, so
Hey, we do now, though.
yeah. So it'll be very interesting, you know, how much that can factor. Can the players go be up for it, right? Which it felt like they were last match, and if they can continue that, who knows what we can see, what this team can do in playoffs, because it's a whole different tournament.
I think
now.
teams are going to be scared to play Charlotte, man. I mean, we look at teams like New York and Orlando, and we're rather not play them. However, but you see, I'm not scared of Miami. Are y'all scared? I think we could take Miami on the day if we really come out and play it. And
I'm scared of Messi, bro.
I don't know. I mean, that's fair, but
You know,
we've handled Miami well, even with
the thing
Messi in the
is-
team.
The thing is, playoffs, this is where your individual talent really carries.
Where it steps up.
Like regular season, it's depth.
Yeah.
In the regular season, that's why teams like the Red Bulls, they won supporter shields. They were great in regular season for a long time because they were a great team with a lot of good players and good depth. But once they hit the playoffs, they just didn't have those game changers to win it all.
Fair.
That is the question here. And in playoffs is where guys like Buanga, Messi, Puig, all these guys, this is where they get paid for. It's these moments here.
Speaking of game changers, this is where I truly want to judge a Pep BL for Charlotte FC. Because obviously I think we've seen 2 really elite games from him, right? But for me, this is an opportunity for him to kind of step himself into that role where this guy could potentially be a talisman, because we've touched on this topic multiple times where we have good DPs, but they're role player DPs. We still don't have that main guy, right? And if we go with Pep, we could risk next year if say Carroll and both Abada stay, we have 3 role players DPs, but now one that really stands out.
But we've begun on this streak all of a sudden, right? And what's new to the streak, right? Other than we bring Privet back, is that Pep started, right? I mean, I wouldn't say his first game here was a fair assessment, right? He had 20 minutes with us, right? But now he's in the game. He's linking up with Carroll, Abada, right? So maybe Pep's the one that's changed it as well for us.
I think it's just an unfair situation for Pep overall. Regardless of how he does, it's just such a limited window. And you have to realize too that
it could burn
9
us
games
too,
is
though.
tough.
Well, no, you have to realize too that he's coming off his preseason. Those first games that he played for us on that losing streak.
Yeah.
Not only is he playing his own first games of the season, these are his first games of the season. He is rusty. He was rusty, but he's playing for a team in bad form. So, right?
To the point.
Right. But, he's heating up now, and it's oh, man, he's heating up now. I would love to see maybe 10 more regular season games from him. You know what I'm saying? To really know.
But it could also come back and burn if somebody else could come along and be like, yo, Pep, man, we got a better contract to show off.
They could, but, at the same time, I think Von Pullman said on an episode is we don't have to necessarily just decide as soon as the season's over.
No, that's fair, right?
Pep wants to be here. Pep really wants to be here.
It's a big plus, when you're making a decision.
100%. He's a player that wants to be here, but I like what you said about these are the moments where your DPs really need to shine.
100%.
So this is going to be a big
Because
stage
he really
for him.
shown well against Chicago and New England, which is it's not a great metric for how far can this team go? He's got to be, for me, he's got to show with goal contributions in the playoffs, and he's got to be one maybe the biggest X factor for during the playoff run for any of these guys.
Yeah.
Speaking of players that have shown off, 6 weeks ago we were talking about Yere being one of the best fullbacks in MLS, right? Now there's been a tactical shift.
Yep.
He's been out of the team, right? We've added Tim Ream because, obviously, when Nathan goes higher, it turns into a back 3, right, when they're attacking. And Nate's been great. Some of the crosses he's been delivering.
That guy gets so
been
much hate for no
phenomenal.
reason, man.
He's a strong contender for player of the season.
Yeah,
100%. He's definitely up there.
Yeah, but speaking on the left side, right, is there an opportunity for him to get back into the team, right? Obviously,
not as it stands today, I wouldn't say.
Dean favors Privet a lot. If he's playing him with, being sick a day before, right, that lets you know how highly he rates that partnership and that back.
And Privet was even looking at Dean at the 60th minute. He said, he was looking at him to take him off, and Dean was like, I looked away and made him play another 20 minutes.
He literally, he said this in the press conference.
He said, I looked down.
Yeah,
he said, I was like, he's playing 90. He looked down.
That's
He said,
funny.
he looked down. Wouldn't look. And Privet was like, take me off, dude. I'm not feeling good. And Dean was like,
fucking
He's like, I
deal
looked
with it.
away.
Yeah.
Let him play another 30.
That's funny.
But that goes to show you,
Do you know? Do you know?
Yeah.
Do you know?
right? So,
No, I think there's an opportunity for Yedda. Regardless, Yedda has been brilliant for us most of the season.
Yeah.
It's kind of one of those situations where Privet was pulled out. It was like, did he really deserve to get pulled out? However, I think if there's a game and we need a goal, I think Yedda's coming in 100%. Yedda be pushing it there. But right now, back to you were saying about the tactics. We have these dogs in the midfield, but I think that's allowed Biel and Abada to be hyper-focused on the attack.
Exactly.
They can just be completely free to be creative, to attack.
Well, they
and
never
they
thought
know, like,
about being defensive ever.
No,
I said
no,
they've
they're not.
never ever thought about being
but to be,
defensive.
I thought Pep was actually quite good defensively in our last game.
Maybe more Pep, but Abada is terrible about tracking back.
Yeah, sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't. But I feel like both of them have gotten a little bit better at that lately. But regardless, the point is they know, like, hey, I can take a few risks because I got Urso and Bronico behind me, right?
Yeah. And also that speaks to, you know, like we talked about, you know, Dean Smith, and I'm like, okay, like when he's looking at when the team isn't doing well, what kind of tactical changes can he make to improve the team? And we've seen that, right? Like, you know, it's pretty bold to take out Yeri, put in Tim, bring back Privet, right? You know, say, okay, if I put Urso and Brandt in this midfield, what can our attack do, right? Like, these are the things that we talked about, like, before we even signed a coach, right, about what we needed to kind of take that next step, and we've seen it this season. Like, when we spoke at the beginning, I think at the beginning of the season, I think you mentioned that 50 points. I was like, bro, there's no way we're getting 50 points. Right now, we're 1 win away, right? So, I mean, that goes to show you, you know, what a good coach can do.
Yeah, and it's bravery to be like, okay, because at the time, the issue was the attack, right? I mean, they also were giving up goals, but I think the main primary issue was, like, how do you increase the amount of goal contributions and output? And to do that, he decided to add defensive changes, you know? So I think that does also take a decent amount of bravery to decide that that's the issue and that's how he can fix the problem, is switching the defense, switching the midfield, and putting in less attacking-minded players to get more out of the attack.
Right,
I think that's a difficult, like, kind of paradox.
I like that a lot because it shows you also the class that he comes from.
Yeah.
Like most guys, you know, maybe you look at some guys that are new to the coaching career and stuff, they'll see an attacking problem and say, hey, let me throw on 2 super attacking fullbacks.
Yep.
Whereas Dean is like, actually, hold up, let me change the shape so that I can get my 3 best players centrally in the box, as close to the box as I possibly can. Abada, Leo, and Carroll are always within that 18 space, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Always in that area. I said, how can I get these guys there? So let's do this instead. And then, of course, utilize Burn as basically a hybrid winger at this point. He's basically a winger for us. And I think coaching in MLS matters more than every other league in the world. That's my hot. It's a hot take, but I don't think it's a hot take.
Expand on that.
Because of the parity in the league, we have seen teams literally be at the bottom.
Yep.
Charlotte FC had some of the most goals conceded last season.
Yep.
This season, we're ranked second in goals conceded. Just the coaching, the squad is pretty much the same.
Yeah,
I mean, for the most part. Yeah. And we had this defensive record before we had new signings, before we had Ream. Dean, that's the common denominator, right? It's Dean. So how many leagues in the world can you make a coaching shift that takes a team from the worst in one aspect into the best in another? Like, and there's no other league that can do that. There's no other league.
Yeah.
So
That's because of structure too, though.
yeah, duh. Yeah. Good one.
You nailed it.
I'm on it. I'm with you. I'm listening.
You're on it, man. You're locked in.
I'm on it.
But
I had a point, but he took it from me. It was straight out of my head.
Dean Smith, something about him?
Yeah, I think it was also like going back to first principles, right? So like what had made them so good at the beginning, and he even laid this out in the press conference, like the foundations of the team were being strong off the ball, being competitive off the ball defensively, being tough and difficult to beat, and then also controlling games. And I think that's what they had gotten away from in the last 7-8 games. And it was like, okay, what are the shifts that need to be made to get back to those principles of like, hey, we got to be a team that's really good off the ball defensively. We got to be a team that's tough to beat and find ways to control games. And that's what's happened over the last couple of games with those changes.
Yeah.
I think that's what really it boiled down to, which is like getting back to first principles for what he wanted this team when he saw them in the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
Plus, I think another important factor is we've relied less on the output of Westwood.
Yeah.
Going forward.
Good point.
Good one.
That's really important.
That's a really good one.
Yeah, because there was, in that period where we were poor, like his passing was kind of off. And I was like, dang, if Westwood's not really creating, we're not really getting anything from our attack.
I thought at the time that like we would go as far as Westwood could take them, but it doesn't seem like that is no longer like really necessarily the case. So.
Yeah, and it was unfair to Westwood as well.
Yeah, to play the
They're
six
the
and be
sixth,
the
bro,
best
right? Yeah, BRDP 10.
The 6, 8, and 10.
Yeah. And so, it's been unfair to him because what he does so well is patrol back there and facilitate and find these outlets and diagonals and If you're relying on him for goals, yeah, you're in trouble. And that's why a guy like Pep came in, right? Yep.
Nice. Awesome. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about who we would like to see Charlotte play in the playoffs, right? This is the conversation we're having now versus, if, Montreal lose in the last minute and, New York does this, then we'll make the play. Right now it's more of like, okay, who could we potentially play, right? Yeah. As it stands right now, well, New York's beating Nashville 3-1, so they would be fifth. Yep. We would be sixth, right? So the highest we can finish in the table now is fifth, right? So we have an opportunity to play either Orlando, Cincinnati, or Columbus, right? Cincy, Supporter Shield winners last year. Columbus Crew, current MLS Cup champs. Orlando City, who's just been in red hot form for the last,
6-7 weeks.
Leagues Cup.
Yeah, they've been they're a pretty hot team, man.
So I'll start off with you, Lee.
All right.
And say it ends today. Who would you like to play against?
I want one of the Ohioans, man.
Really?
Yeah, I think FC Cincinnati is where it's at.
Why is that?
I just think we match up good against them, right? I mean, we struggled a couple of times we played them for sure, but I feel like we could go up there, nick a win on the road.
Well, we have this season, which is a positive.
Yeah. I think we just match up against them and Nashville. Not Nashville, but Columbus as well. So either one is fine for me. Plus, it's an easy drive, and we can go to the game too.
That's a nice stadium, right, Brian?
Yeah, Cincinnati, the environment, the way they have it set up. I went to that game this year, and it was honestly the vibe they have there is like really incredible. The walk up to the park, they've done a lot of work to like kind of get that all established. But there's like a concert in the park on the walk up, then there's a concert like right outside the ticket booth of the game, and then you're like kind of going in. And also whatever they have, I don't know if they just don't have it subcontracted out or what the situation is, but all like their vending is pretty reasonably priced in there. And it's like a lot of local restaurants and shops and stuff like that. So it's like, it's pretty set up well. Like from the
I just want to say, like, Charlotte's going to gouge us however they can do it, man. PSL. Anyways, we're not going down that path today.
So I mean, it was a great atmosphere, and then like the fans, I mean, are electric.
It's a nice stadium too, man.
Yeah, you can tell the difference like of a soccer-specific stadium that, how the acoustics just work. As soon as Acosta scored that goal, I mean, obviously Charlotte like quieted him for the most of that game, but that Acosta goal was like, I mean, just exploded with sound and energy in that moment.
Speaking of difference makers, also that you touched on in playoffs, right? Does that concern you though? Like a guy like Lucho Acosta, if we were to play them, like I mean, last year he torched the whole defense and had the best goal of MLS.
The thing is, like, I mean, you guys look at the playoff landscape right now. Yeah, every team we're facing has got some game changers. Yep. I mean, this is a really stacked playoffs on both conferences. Yeah. I mean, these are a lot of good teams in this playoffs. I would say this is maybe, we've had some good runs, but I believe this is like kind of the first time in maybe like 4, 5, 6 seasons where I feel like, my goodness, like there are top elite teams across the board everywhere. Because you will go in and it's like you got these guys like, these two will likely make it. For the past few years, the LAFC has been sort of a given. Yeah. But whether it's Miami, these different teams is. Anyone can kind of make this run. Like Orlando has got Facundo Torres, Ojeda. You got guys at New York City, even though there's not technically a DP, he's got like Alonso Martinez who's popping off for them. Yep. For me, I want to face a team that has the least momentum. Who's that? Cincinnati. Yeah. Because historically, MLS has shown us that teams that go into playoffs in a good run of form tend to continue that form. So give me the team that's not on a hot streak like Orlando or New York City. Columbus. Again, you're talking about difference makers. Cucho Hernandez, Diego Rossi. Yeah. I mean, so at this point, it's not about who has a playmaker because they all do. It's about, for me, who has the least amount of momentum and form going in.
Yeah, if the New York teams are still in the running, I think I would probably have preferred them. But with them out of the running, if you're comparing between Columbus, Cincinnati, and Orlando, I think it's also Cincinnati for me. Those other Orlando are just blistering hot, and they really have they have 2 or 3 starting caliber strikers in Montreal, Enrique, and Duncan McGuire. Like they're just, I mean, Angulo is also really good, and I mean they just have all 3 lines. They're really solid, and then Columbus are just most battle they've just dealt with battles all season. They've had to play Campeones Cup and play Club America, and they were just short a penalty kick from winning that and being Club America, and that was just within the last few weeks. I mean, winning Leagues Cup, winning MLS Cup last year. I mean, that team is just as battle tested as they come. So I'm definitely concerned about them. Apparently, Columbus fans. I mean, because I do the shameless plug, Dropping Points fantasy show with Blake. They're also concerned about playing Charlotte, but I'm kind of cool with both of us just being concerned about playing each other, and then they just completely avoid each other in the first round. And just, mutual benefit.
On top of that too, bro, Orlando, they have Lodeiro coming off the bench. This is a previous best 11 player in MLS.
You were just mentioning it last night,
right? And he has. I mean, he's I think almost tied for most assists, right? He's a little bit under Ojeda, maybe.
Yep.
So, you have a guy like Lodeiro and Muriel coming off the bench. This is crazy, man. Yeah. Crazy, the talent in MLS now.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's that Messi effect, honestly. That's the Messi effect that maybe isn't being talked about so much. But, the last 2 windows have been record windows, and that's where it's happened. Is now that you've got, 5, 6, 7 teams in both conferences that have, just
inflation,
real
man.
classy players. Yeah. Inflation of, Messi effect inflation.
Yeah. I think for me, it'd be FC Cincinnati as well for the exact same reason. You mentioned, you want to go against teams that aren't so hot, right? And so that's why even going into this game against DC, it's important to get a result because Red Bulls are 1 point behind us, right? And then DC is tied on points with Montreal, and so they're going to want to finish in that eighth position to be able to host that playing game. We saw last year how important that was when we got torched by Red Bulls.
Torched.
5-2, right?
Torched.
And they have the best, Benteke is has 20 plus goals 23 this season in a pretty average team.
Crazy, man. He's popping off. But no, I mean, it's all about form at this point. And Benteke, MLS, any team can beat you any day.
Yeah.
Just got to stay alert, got to be aware, and don't get complacent.
Yeah, and then throw in an international break, and we got you.
Hey, at peak MLS.
Yeah, for real.
Well, I guess, they can't control that,
No, it's fair. I'm just saying, right? It's just momentum's a thing.
Yeah.
It is.
Until it's not.
I will say FC Cincinnati is also the worst. It has the worst form at home out of those 3 teams as well.
True, yeah.
And Charlotte have to find a road win, right? So optimal to play a team that's not doing so well at home right now. So,
they're better on the road.
Yeah.
Crazy.
They've been one of the best road teams.
Yeah, I know. That's it. Yeah, I would take my chances on the road.
Yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. And speaking of, Caleb, you mentioned a little bit of, seeing kind of these teams hit this other stride, other levels, right? This is where, and credit to Vaughn, where he touched on this at the beginning of the season. I didn't see it, where he said, Charlotte will probably be in that second tier of, between maybe 4th and 7th, right? And you could tell, this year, there was a difference between Miami, Columbus, even though Cincinnati hasn't been so hot recently, but they've been kind of the top 3 teams in the East. In the West, you have the LA teams, right? Seattle just defensively has the least goals conceded as well, right? So, there's certain teams that you look across the table and you're like, okay, these are top tier MLS teams, and it feels like we're kind of in that second tier now, which big credit to Dean. But what's it going to take for this team to kind of be in that first kind of tier, right? Because one, now with playoffs coming in, it's a brand new tournament, and anything can happen. So I'll start off with you, Caleb.
It generally always comes down to DPs. There are rare cases where you may have an excellent DP, but you have terrible depth. I think Toronto's problem was that. Toronto has some incredible DPs, but the surrounding talent was lacking. Yeah. And in our case, I think we have a really strong floor. I think our floor is super high. Yeah. You look at our back line, we got, our center back core is strong. Every position we're too deep. And I feel comfortable with guys coming off the bench. When Yudi, Patrick, and Vargas came on, I feel just as good about scoring a goal as I do with the first team guys. But that's also a problem.
It's a more complete squad now than what we've ever had.
No, exactly. The depth is there.
Yeah.
Now it's a matter about how can we increase that ceiling. And part of the problem is sometimes when our second crew comes in, and I feel just as confident as our first crew, imagine Columbus fans when Cucho gets subbed off. Anyone that follows that up is going to be a huge downgrade.
Yeah.
You would love to sort of have that sentiment and feeling, I think, with our team. So it comes down to, can we get an attacking midfielder, striker, winger that can produce 10+ goals a season. I think that's it. It'd be great to have a striker that can score 20 goals. It'd be great to have a winger that can score 20 goals. But I think we need to have at least one Cucho, one Bouanga, one even I think Peck over at Galaxy. Peck, the winger, Gabriel Peck is a phenomenal player. He's an insane player. But just a guy like that could take us to the next level.
Nice. And from what we've seen from our DPs, at least so far, with both Abada and Soderski, they have moments, but they're not like consistent. Like you wouldn't put him in that first tier of DPs.
No, I mean, I don't think you can. I mean, when you look at some of the stats that some of these DPs are putting up now, I mean, LA Galaxy have 3 guys with 20 goal contributions plus.
Yeah.
I mean, RSL has 2 or 3 guys with goal. I mean, they're putting up so many goal contributions, they're getting sold mid-season, and they still have 20 goal contributions. Like, that's where, like, RSL, some of their attacking options have been. Like, Carlos Gomez had just a ridiculous year. Bogusz, in LAFC, like, he's not even a DP, and he's put up, like, so there's some of these numbers that some of these teams are putting up now. Just, again, part of the Messi effect of just the level of signings that teams are making. The bar has just been raised. If you think of an Abada, Cucho came in on a similar transfer fee to what Abada was, similar salary. So, right, they're in the similar echelon, similar age, but the difference between a Cucho and Abada is just, just light years apart.
Yeah.
I mean, one played in a top 5 league across Premier League and La Liga, and then one played in Scotland. I mean,
but and just in terms of, like, valuation.
No, you're right. No,
What's wrong with Scotland, man?
100%. Don't try to rivalry with Scotland.
All right.
No, but you're right. Yeah, you're exactly
But
right.
I mean, all 3 of our DPs, even combined, haven't scored 20 goals. So I mean, just somebody that come in and score 10 would be good too.
Oh, we already have 10.
You know what I mean? No, I'm
Yeah, I
being
know what you
facetious
mean.
in what I'm saying, but like you guys are saying we need these 20, but maybe across the board helps too, right?
What position would you feel would be more important to see that like elite number 1 in? Would you say
Man, I don't know,
striker
because it depends
position,
if what we're doing with Carroll next season, and then I feel like the wing we could upgrade there for sure, but then it really just depends. Dino effect, right? He's gonna build his team out.
Yeah.
He's gonna get us that. But left wing, I think, is probably where I would upgrade first.
Interesting. I was thinking because I mean the easiest swap out right now with the roster is probably Junior Urso is like 34, so that midfield position is going to be open likely after this year. I don't think I've heard about him getting re-signed or extended or anything like that. So I could totally see whatever they end up doing with that midfield, whether they try to find a box-to-box midfielder who's just like another level in terms of creativity in the attacking third, but still willing to kind of run both ways, having an 8 that will, box-to-box, or go back to the attacking midfielders of more of a pure 10. The issue with kind of Dean's system is when we've seen him play four attacking options, they kind of get disjointed. That was kind of what happened before they went on this recent streak. So maybe even a box-to-box 8 who's just another level up.
So who gets dropped? So does Bronico or Biel get dropped?
No, it's Urso at that point, I think. Urso.
Or Gianni.
See, but I think if you get a DP at that, that's just another level, right? So you're looking at, because Westwood's re-signed, so he's playing, obviously, starting next year.
So you're saying a DP8.
Yeah, that would play alongside Bronico and Westwood.
Okay, so then where are the DP slots going to?
So you still, I would imagine Abada is still staying this
Right,
next
Abada?
year.
So you have one more DP slot.
And then I'm thinking Biel might stay this year. I think
He's on an
Agyemang-
8 and keep Biel.
Maybe. Or upgrade there as well. I think they have a lot of. That's where the low risk situation of Biel coming in on a loan. They have flexibility. They could technically get 2 DPs if they decide to move on from Carroll and go with Agyemang and move on from Biel. They then have a lot of flexibility.
If they move on from Carroll, I don't see them like Dean saying, "Okay, Pat, you're going to lead the line next season."
You don't think so?
I think they would replace him.
Oh wow!
I think. Well,
No, I feel that.
I feel like Pat would then want out.
Yeah, and that's soccer. That's football.
Yeah.
I think because think about for a long time the team was linked with strikers. Callum Wilson, right?
Yep.
Was a name that popped up.
Yeah.
A lot of names have been popping up with strikers.
Yeah.
Dean has even said it in press conferences on multiple occasions.
Yeah.
I want a striker. And this is when. At that point, Patrick has 76 goals at that point, right? Mm-hmm. And he's still saying we need a striker, and not just any striker, not like a young sort of come up, type. I want like a senior
yeah,
striker.
Like a Chris Wood.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So I think that I could definitely see Patrick. This is going more into the area of not so much what I want, but what Dean is. I think what he's thinking like, and I think it's pretty clear he wants to bring in his senior type of striker, his new Ollie Watkins.
Yeah.
You know, does he see Patrick being that for him? I don't know, man. I don't think so. Do I think Pat can hit 15 goals a season? Yeah, I do think
easily,
absolutely.
Yeah. But I'm in agreement with you. I don't think he sees Pat long term.
Well, no, I don't know if that's what he's saying, but what I see is that, like, I think Pat, in my perspective, would be good as a good role player at least one more year.
Yeah.
You know, I don't see him coming at the end of this season and saying, if I'm going to renew, like, I got to be number one next season.
I think.
But
this might not
having
be
said that, he's the only one that hasn't renewed his contract.
Well, exactly. So that was the point I was going to bring up.
That's a
So
good point.
the issue is, I think the time might be up in terms of being like, hey, we want you for another role. I mean, the hype is real, right? I mean, he might be one of the most hyped prospects in MLS right now. I mean, the amount of every Charlotte game, every announcer has been like, man, I would love to see Patrick Agyemang start. Like, they're saying it live on the broadcast. Andrew Wiebe is bringing it up. Marisa Adu brought it up in the last broadcast in Miami.
Yeah, Doyle has been tweeting about it.
I mean, everybody, the hype is real about him, and that plays a factor. Like, his agents are taking that information and are like, yo, up it, like, right? So that's happening right now, and I would imagine that's playing a role as to why Privet's getting signed. Milan, these guys are already they got the evaluations and they got the deals done. Whereas I'd imagine there's a chance that the number that Agyemang's agent could be bringing in is a bit off from where Zoran and these guys are maybe linking up, and then that's going to play a role because they see, I want to have a role player for another year, and their evaluation is like, now we're looking closer to TAM, and then then you just have an issue. But goals are a premium. Yeah. He's shown that in 2,000 minutes he put up Karol Swiderski's numbers in his 2022 season. Like, that's just what has happened. Yeah. So it's hard. I think that could just end up being the issue where, Charlotte could also then be out two strikers. Yeah. And, this offseason could get a little
wild. What was that stat you were showing me where he was third in, I think, chance created for himself?
Goal creating actions. Yeah. He's there with Suarez and Cucho. Mm-hmm. In terms of strikers who are creating the most goal-creating actions per 90, Agyemang is right there. And he's right at the top of the league in terms of take-ons that lead to a goal-creating action and also shot-creating action take-ons. Like, his ability 1v1 is near the top of the league. Yeah. Like, it's very, very, very good. And you can see it. The last goal he just scored, Waterman, but he did that to Glesnes, who used to be a defender of the year for Philadelphia. Like, he's done this to McNaughton in Nashville. Elias from New York Rebels. A lot of these good center backs, and so he's got the highlight reel. Yeah. He's got the hype behind him. Yeah. Everybody wants to see him starting, not just in Charlotte, like around. Like, honestly, I think more people around the league want to see him start than people in Charlotte.
Are you a little passionate about Patrick?
Yeah.
Is that really what you want? It seems like you're a little invested.
Yeah, I'm a little invested. I've done a little bit of reading.
Well, how much is agent paying?
I do want to add real quick. There's a name that we haven't talked about. Idan Toklamati. Yeah. How does he affect the roster?
Ooh, good point. Yeah,
Idan
3.5 mil.
Toklamati is an investment from the team.
Yeah.
He quickly showed he's above legacy level. Yeah. Right.
Easily.
He's a baller. Yeah. And he's seen more as a striker than as a winger.
Oh, good call. Yeah.
So. You have, let's assume Swiderski does go. Yeah. You have Pat and you have Toklamati. That sort of understudy role type of player is already there. Yeah. Toklamati is that understudy at the striker position.
Yeah. Well, that would be the big decision that they would have to make then. Like, that Dean would be like, okay, well, this is what we're going to roll with. Mm-hmm. But I agree with, like, both schools of thought where, like, his agent can go like, yo, this is a ready starting striker in MLS. Yeah. In Charlotte, and Dean saying, no, I think we can play him 1 year as, kind of an important role player for us. At least one more year.
Yeah, see, I agree with Brian that I think that window's gone. Yeah. I think you either commit to him this year or you don't. Because, his stock is high.
Somebody's going to want
Pat's going to be turning, Pat is what, 24 now?
23, 24, and he's got double-digit.
He's turning 25, I believe, next season. at that point, you're not thinking about like understudying. You're thinking, how can I get the most minutes possible to really break out?
Yeah.
And I think if you're Charlotte, you're looking at Pat, you're like, this is a real talent we have here with a lot of demand. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, Dike scored 8 goals and got about, I think, 2 assists in his first season with Orlando, and he was getting hyped up.
Yeah.
And how much was Dike sold to the championship? I think at the time it was around maybe $6 million.
Yeah.
I think $5-6 million around there.
Just above Duncan.
Yeah, just above Duncan. Now that was like maybe like what 3-4 years ago.
Yeah.
4 years ago now, maybe around there. The league is much more respected. American talent is much more respected. Yeah. It's MLS talent is now seen as, hey, this is transferable to European soccer.
Yep.
And if Dike goes for $5 million at that time, maybe Pat goes for 7, 8.
And here's the other variable there. Agyemang's also on an expiring contract, right? He doesn't have to sign.
Yeah.
He could also shop around for himself. Yeah. I'd imagine there's a lot of decent teams in MLS who would also be willing to pick him up. I'm thinking even Columbus is one example. It could be a team. They also they're looking for strikers like an Agyemang profile, I would say.
They already poached Jones.
Right? right?
Yeah.
LAFC also is looking for a striker, probably more long-term than Giroud. There's good teams in MLS that are probably eyeing, and Cincinnati, and so good teams in MLS could use a player and have already proven to kind of take that route and kind of, hey, can we kind of be aggressive and sort of opportunistic about the market? Cincinnati, Columbus, and LAFC, I'd say, were all good examples of kind of being opportunistic in that way to kind of just take advantage of a team that's maybe on the fence about whether or not they actually want to commit to this guy. And then Charlotte could let him, could end up, because they can't come to terms, he could walk. He could technically walk and shop around for himself.
That's why I'd imagine it just makes more and more sense why he's the last player that hasn't.
100%.
How much longer
Well,
is he
that's
got
what
on
goals-
his contract? When is his contract?
He has an option, which is not going to be happening. If his option is anywhere near his salary now, he's worlds above that. It's $80K. So that option's not getting signed, right? He has to have a new deal. And it's just a matter of whether or not it's in Charlotte or whether or not. But Agyemang, honestly, he has a lot of cards he can.
Yeah,
play
if you're
for
his
himself.
if you're the agent, you hold more of the poker chips now, and it's what we went back to, where it's does Dean consider him his number one striker next season? And I've gotten more indications that he doesn't than he does, right? So, but we'll see. It's a very interesting topic right there.
I think that's a big topic for this offseason for sure.
It is. And then quickly, let's just touch really fast on just DC and kind of the expectation headed into that game.
Yeah.
I kind of touched on it, how it's still an important game for us and a very important game for DC, right? How concerned are you, Caleb, with a striker like Benteke, who's kind of hit his stride in MLS, former Liverpool player?
You got this.
Why you gotta throw that in there, man? That was whatever. Go ahead.
Honestly, having Privet, Malanda back there, I genuinely think that they can handle any striker in the league. Yep. I think they show they can handle any striker in the league. Even Cucho has been quite silent against us. I'm not. Obviously, Benteke can find his moments and stuff. The question, I think, comes down to, will we give him an opportunity to do so? Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, Benteke, striker is the most dependent position on your 10 other players.
Yeah.
You got to get some kind of ball in the box somewhere at some time. If we can stop that, they're not scoring a goal. They're just not. But it is, again, it's important for momentum to keep them. The worst thing to do is lose your decision day game right before playoffs. That is the worst. That's the worst feeling.
We don't really stack up well against DC, though. We struggle with them often.
Okay, but
we got bogey teams, right? Red Bulls for me is one. Orlando's the other.
Have we won away at DC? I can't. I know we lost. That was our very first game we lost.
They had a bad game. I think it was last year. It was Benteke had a bicycle kick or something.
That's right. We lost that. We've never won in DC.
No, ever.
No, and there's been
We
bad
had,
losses.
goals.
Yeah, 3-0 very first match that we played.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got fans flipping in front of us in the chairs.
hey, we won 2. They won 2. We've drawn 1.
Yeah, but we've
never won.
Never
away.
won there.
Yeah.
We've drawn there, but that's it. We drew once.
Yeah. So I think you nailed it on the head in terms of just the service into the box. So that means you really got to defend the wings well. Aaron Herrera is going to be one of their main service, providers into the box. So you got to stop him from when he gets up the field as their wing back. They also have invested a lot in their midfield. Cleef They're also their new midfielder this year, Pirani. They have a few guys in the midfield that can be a little tricky with the ball at times. And so, like, how do you continue to just man up against them with your work rate guys in Urso, Westwood, and Bronico? So you really just got to stop the point of attack, which is what they did against Montreal, and now they just got to do it again against DC.
A DC in the play-ins guaranteed, regardless.
So they are with 40 points. They're tied with Montreal, but they're in 8th right now.
So they got something to play for, but it's not like do or die, right?
Well, I think you
want to be at home.
No, 100%.
Montreal.
But I'm just saying, like, if they were to lose to us, they're still in the play-in, so that they can continue that journey.
Yeah, but home.
We saw that with us, how important
Home
that.
games are just so vital in this league.
100%.
We were 3 minutes away from having a play-in game in Charlotte.
Yep.
You know, and then I think Montreal lost.
To a penalty to New York Red Bulls.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
drilled a
It
penalty in
was.
stoppage time.
I remember that.
Yeah, and so that kind of shifted that. And, you know, so, if you're DC, you're going to want to win. And you're going to want to
No, of course, but it's like, there's always like you have to win versus like we need to win.
Yeah. Well, Charlotte's kind of in that same boat, right?
Yeah.
Like they don't have to win, but it would be nice to win.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like almost like maybe if New York's ahead of them, playing Cincinnati might be most
I just
optimal
want
anyway,
six.
right?
Well,
Six,
the problem is that Red Bull is 1 point behind.
That's true. See, yeah,
You know?
that's true.
So
That's fair.
you
Yeah.
can't just like
No,
relax. And
switching
say-
from Cincinnati to Columbus is a pretty big, big shift. Yeah.
Yeah, which makes decision day all that more interesting, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not like
Yeah.
when we went. It's funny because the last 2 seasons we finished with a game against Red Bulls, right? It was Red Bull away first season, which we had nothing to play for,
Yep.
and we got spanked in Red Bulls this season, right? Or last year.
That we did. That was
So-
hard to watch.
But yeah, I think like having something to play for both teams is going to be important. And like you have to go and treat this game like I need to win this because you don't know what Red Bulls is going to do.
No.
Playoff mentality, man.
Yeah.
Now, DC's defense has been kind of weak, so Charlotte should be able to score again. I think this is actually a good opportunity for Bial. We've talked about like Bial being an X factor. He was in 2 games against teams that were kind of subpar.
Yeah.
This is a big game against a team that is a playoff team. They're locked in as a playoff team. Can you show up in a big moment on the road? Right. He's also hasn't really shown up on the road the same way he has at home. This is kind of a big moment for him. I would say Bial is maybe my key player of the game.
My just biggest concern is how will we look coming back into that game after that international break.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I kind of want to see. Like, okay, did the team drop off significantly again, right?
And that's why I'm concerned about the fact that we're in the playoffs, right? We wait that week or whatever for that playing game to be done. So.
But then, on a positive note, you've got Swiderski that's still going to play with Poland. Tim Ream, who's still going to play with the U.S. men's national team. So, I mean, there will be some players with some sort of form.
Tabata likely.
Yep.
Right.
Tabata. Well, we're not like Dean mentioned that him and Pep had like a tight hamstring.
That's right.
So they still have to evaluate that. But with that said, guys, another great episode tonight. Lee, where can we find you at?
Right here. COTFC Fan TV for the fans, by the fans, damn it.
Nice. Mr. Caleb.
It's real simple. It's Caleb Adams. That's
It's
it.
Caleb Adams. Could we
On
pretend?
Twitter.
You know, the OGs remember you from Regal Soccer. Could we see a
do.
comeback? Any exclusives you could drop right now?
Like any
We're in
on the
negotiations.
articles?
We'll see how things go. It's very early stages. Nothing to report on now.
Nice. Brian?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Mauer Media, and you can also find all my written content at Topbin90.com.
And I'm Jorge Gonzalez. Follow all our socials at Topbin90. Go!